Welcome once again to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at diablopodcast.com, and this week we have another big show. Big show, almost too big. We actually have 5 guests on the show this week. The first segment runs for about 22 minutes, and it is myself speaking with Wolfpack777 and Diablo's Minion, 2 of our regular site readers and contributors, and we talk about Blizzard's ongoing Facebook Likes program, and more specifically, the images being released through it. I've been a little less than thrilled by the quality and variety and interest level of the screenshots, and I thought perhaps that was just me, and maybe the fans were a little more forgiving or a little more interested. But as you will hear very shortly, the other 2 guests are actually maybe more critical of them than I am. So it's not clear what Blizzard is accomplishing with these images if all of the more serious, hardcore fan site reading fans are bored with them and wish they were doing something different. And that extends, as I said, for about the first 22 minutes of the show. And after that, it really kicks off. You will hear all about the PvP demo at BlizzCon 2010. I speak with 3 guests who all played it extensively at the show. My friend Dana and site readers Nineball and Exile, who spoke on the show on Monday about general purpose BlizzCon stuff. And this time it's all about the demo, all about the PvP, what they did, who they played, how well they did, what was fun. Exile even shares his delightful tale of playing with 2 friends and beating 3 strangers by more than 20-0, so badly they beat them that one of the guys quit partway through the game and walked off in disgust. And if you don't want that to happen to you in the arena, you will do well to listen and pick up some tips and hints. We're going to have another 2 shows next week, Monday and Thursday, with all kinds of more stuff, mostly focused on BlizzCon, but I'm trying to get a special surprise guest for Monday's show, which should be very interesting, and he should be able to share some of his very recent experiences playing Diablo 3, and we're hoping that will work out. And if not, you'll just have 2 shows about BlizzCon. So enjoy the show, and I will talk to you next week. This week we are talking to Wolfpack. Say hi, Wolfie.
Hello.
And Diablo's Minion.
Good evening.
Good evening. That was a very subtle good evening. Wolfpack, tell us a little bit about who you are, why you're interested in the podcast, and what you think about the Blizzard images thus far.
All right. Okay, well, as you know, my name's Wolfpack on the forums with 3 sevens after it. I live in California, and I am extremely excited about Diablo 3 because of the massive amount of time, I guess, I spent playing the first 2 of the series. I got Diablo 1 back in the late 90s. Played it. I loved the music. I loved the gameplay. And when I heard that the second one was coming out, I was extremely excited, and I got it. And I spent about as much time playing that game as I've spent any games other than that. It was just the addictiveness, the item hunt, everything about it just really drew me. And I have to say, so far, what I've heard from people who've played the BlizzCon reports, etc., that Diablo 3 sounds like it's going to be every bit as fun and every bit as compelling. But as far as the Facebook releases, I am not very impressed by the screenshots at all. And while I see their motivation to drive their marketing by integrating with the social networks, just as a hardcore fan like myself, it doesn't do a lot for me personally.
Okay, what do you think, Diablo?
Well, a little bit about me first. I'm from Ohio. I go by Diablo's Minion on the forums. I've been a long time Diablo player ever since I can remember. I spent more hours than I should have playing the game. I'm really excited for Diablo 3 and all the improvements that seem to be happening. And I'm going to have to agree with Wolfpack on the quality and what we've been getting so far with the Facebook images anyway. I'm not sure if it's just the hardcore fan of me that wants more or new, because I'm not one of the the loose followers. So I'm guessing that's why we're all kind of upset about it.
So there's kind of 3 perspectives that I figured people could have on these pictures. Number 1, Blizzard's doing a fantastic job. I love the images. This is exactly how it should be. I don't know what anyone's complaining about. And the neutral position is it's okay. It's better than nothing. We should be happy that we're getting any screenshots at all. or position 3 is Blizzard is doing a terrible job, these pictures suck, they should be doing much better with fan relations, etc. It sounds like you guys are pretty close to position 3, or at least like maybe a 2.5.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm disappointed or upset with them. I mean, they're obviously extremely busy programming their game, so like I sort of can agree with both points there that we are grateful. I mean, I was looking back through some of the screenshots we've gotten, and there have been a couple gems in there that I thought, wow, this is really cool. Like the massive image of the cathedral we got at the beginning of March. That's awesome because that just plugs right into the beginning of Diablo 1, and I thought that was amazing. And there were a couple of the gameplay screenshots too that illustrated some things we hadn't seen before, and I thought, whoa, that's pretty cool. But overall, as far as how much more excited it's making me about the game, like, yeah, it's not doing much more because I'm already practically at the limit, you know?
So, Diablo's minion. I'll just call you DM maybe. So DM, we went a long time, like most of '09 and a lot of last year, getting no images at all. Or, we'd go months between anything, and then we'd get like 10 at once with an interview or something. So, I mean, obviously, neither of you guys are all that excited about the Facebook stuff, but we're getting, more or less 2 new images. And, I guess new can be debated.
Right.
But we're getting some visuals at least once a week. Isn't that better than nothing at all?
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
But then again, better than nothing at all is not
Yeah.
really what we should be shooting for. I mean, Blizzard is obviously making efforts to give us stuff in advance. Better than nothing. We're not getting 0 content. But what would you like to see differently? Just would you like more images, more variety in the images? You want new stuff in the pictures?
Yeah, maybe even some screenshots from the Worldwide Invitational back in '08, stuff from there that we haven't seen. All the new ones from the Demon Hunter and respective classes in the Halls of Agony, they all pretty much look the same in my opinion. The only time you get something exciting is if you see a champion or a boss monster in there.
Do you think that if they were giving us more info about them, I mean, like, say if each picture had like a paragraph, Bashiak or someone could write it and say, here's what the game was, here's the name of this monster, here's what the situation, or is that just pretty obvious from the visuals?
Paragraph from Bashiak would be great. I really feel that even more compelling would be a video, and it doesn't have to be like a 19-minute video, like a 10-second video of illustrating a new way to use a skill. And there's going to be a lot of skills in the game. I think when you combine all of the skill runes and unique skills for each classes, we're up in the hundreds. And I think we're getting to the point where if they wanted to show one video with the sorcerer shooting multiple magic missiles and then talking about that, it wouldn't be too hard capturing games in a video is not too compelling. I would enjoy video much more than I would in screenshot, for sure.
So let me just to briefly run down for people who haven't followed the images that obsessively as myself, since I have to post them all in our gallery, so I really pay attention to it. But anyway, the WWI movie was the first thing we saw. That was in June 2008. And that was the long gameplay intro of the Barbarian and the Witch Doctor, and most of it was in a dungeon level below Tristram, they called it. And we saw Kane get rescued, and we saw Thousand Pounder in that, and you saw a couple of brief glimpses of the Siegebreaker. And then the characters proceeded outside and were joined by the female versions of the same classes. And they all ended up fighting Siegebreaker in a huge dungeon at the end. And then we saw in just a few months later, in 2008's BlizzCon, we saw the Wizard introduced. And she basically played through fairly similar dungeons. But we had the Skeleton King. That was also in the demo in 2008. And then every screenshot for the next year was from, it looked like the same builds as far as I could tell, the same builds and maybe even the same characters that were in those first 2 movies. So we had all shots of the Wizard in the Skeleton King dungeons, and we had all shots of the Barbarian and the Witch Doctor in the WWI dungeons. And as far as I can tell, they took, they had a couple of play sessions, I'm sure for, a few weeks they spent with their demo team, their Q&A people, just taking lots and lots of screenshots of these test dungeons. And then they socked all those screenshots away and released them, slowly over the next year and a half. and thus we got, really zero variety. We saw the same thing many, many times from many angles, and it was, I guess it was the familiarity of it was kind of nice in some ways, but we saw nothing new, the same monsters, same skills, same equipment, same everything. Yeah. And then the same thing happened with BlizzCon 2010. We got BlizzCon 29, we got the Act 2 dungeons and deserts. And then every screenshot for the next year was from that. And then in 2010, we got the fiery, tortured-looking dungeon and the jail and the demon hunter. And every screenshot since then has been from those areas.
Yeah, that's definitely what it seems like.
As I'm trying to wind this towards a question here at some point, do you guys feel like we're just getting the same? It's like Blizzard did all their PR and screenshot work for 1 week back in, September of last year, and now they're just feeding out images from that for the next, 9 months.
It can be considered laziness. I see two sides of that, instead of them spending all their time doing screenshots just for us, they'll actually spend more time making the game. And
yeah, I agree with that.
True, but it's not like Jay Wilson's, running out of a meeting to take screenshots for the website. I mean, they have people, they have a web team, they have community managers, and their job is to, manage the community. Their job is to do the PR stuff.
Yeah, I'm wondering, too, is them wanting to save a lot of the surprises for us to experience when the game actually comes out, because I definitely wouldn't want to see a screenshot of them fighting the final boss, and obviously that's an extreme of the other end of revealing too much, but who knows, somewhere in the middle is where they want to hit, or if they just want to keep it all the way on the other end, where once they've shown the massive gameplay videos and given the demos at BlizzCon, if that's just pretty much it, and they don't want to let too much more than that out just for the experience of it and to increase the hype for it.
Yeah, what do you think about that, DM?
Well, if they don't really have anything good to show, how are they going to increase the hype?
Yeah, you got a point.
Yeah, I guess.
My other question was going to be what basically Wolfpack just brought up, is how does this, obviously they're trying to save a lot of cool stuff for us to see when we first play the game. And, you wouldn't want to see, his example is we wouldn't want to see the final boss in the entire game, Diablo or whoever that is. And we don't necessarily, it's kind of cool we haven't seen any of Act 3, and we have no idea what Act 4 is even set in. I mean, we're kind of assuming it's a return to hell if they're going to keep following the path of D2, but it might not be. But we know, all we know about Act 3 is a little bit about Bastion's Keep. Bastion. I always type that too. So it's nice that there's a lot of surprises, and we've only seen a tiny amount of the skill runes. But, where do you balance that scale between giving the fans something cool to look at now and saving all the cool stuff for later?
It's a tough call.
That was insightful.
Yeah.
Wow, thanks for cutting that baby right in half there, Solomon.
Boom.
So if you were running Blizzard, Diablo's Minion, if you're running the PR department and the public relations imagery, would you be doing what they're doing, or would you be showing us more?
I'd probably show enough to make you mad at me, to make me want even more, but then just cut it off right then.
That sounds like my last date. So,
nice.
So you can, so am I. So you can, so what do you mean by showing us more? Would you be teasing stuff, or would you show like new areas but not the good parts of new areas, or like the edge, like, would you get a new monster like half on the screen or in a shadow or something?
Yeah, like that. Or, in the world, the initial gameplay, like the Siegebreaker, running behind in the shadows, maybe, or something like that, or a part of a main quest, just a brief glimpse. Because they didn't showed us none of the quests, except for the generic, go find this dude.
That's pretty much all we've gotten in the demos, too.
Yeah.
That would be cool, I think. Like, if it showed an NPC talking, we could just see, like, the start of the conversation.
Yeah, I really liked from the BlizzCon 2010 demo videos of the King Leoric's ghost ordering his wife's head cut off by the guillotine.
Yeah.
If I was managing it, I'd show part of it. I mean, I wouldn't show, obviously they included that whole scene just for the, oh, wow, that's awesome, cinematics right there within the game, but I would probably show someone adventuring and then wandering up to something like that and then having it starting, but then just cut it off right there just to leave you hanging.
Like Queen's Head.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to briefly flash back to the Diablo 2 days, everything, gets compared to D2 in terms of gameplay, but the PR stuff for D2 was really by the seat of their pants. It was initially run all by Blizzard North. They had no actual webmaster. One of the guys, Mike Wang, actually ran their website back in those days. And when they were doing the early screenshot of the weeks, it was just him taking some shots in the game once in a while and putting one up on the website. And, I've seen fans lately flashing back to those days saying, oh, it was so much cooler in D2. They had those screenshots of the week and it was much more fun than this. But I recall quite a bit of, controversy or forum rage about the screenshots of the week as well. People would say it's the same thing over and over again. And I recall one fairly early on where it was just a shot of, I think it was an Amazon, standing on one of those bridges over the little rivers in Act 1 with rain falling. And it was pretty, but there was no action, there were no monsters, and it was just sort of this contemplative, oh, look at this, they were probably happy with the weather patterns. Now they had rain in the game, And there was just like endless forum complaints, oh, this sucks, we want more action, etc. So I don't really know that Blizzard could really satisfy everyone. I mean, we saw pretty much everything except Act 4 in screenshots before D2 was released. We had screenshots of Act 3. We didn't actually see the Act bosses, but we saw pretty much every dungeon in every area. And I don't recall being bored playing the game, being like, oh, I've already seen this in a screenshot.
Right, that's true.
So I don't know how much there is to saving, when you're playing it, it's very different than watching it on a screen or just seeing a still picture of it. Have you seen too much? Are you glad you haven't seen like any of Chaldeum or anything of Act 3 yet?
A little bit. I kind of want to see what they're doing with the towns, and because there's not be a safe spot, like in Diablo 2, you're gonna have your caravan run around with you. But I'm interested to see how they're gonna design and build the architecture of the entire cityscapes.
I'm less excited about getting screenshots than I am getting actual hard game information. So if instead of, screenshots are cool, but it would also be cool if one week they decided, okay, we're going to explain what the Crimson Rune does for the Wizard's Electrocute spell or whatever the chain one out of her hand is.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah, that one spell.
They could include a screenshot. A screenshot would obviously go with that pretty easily as well.
Yeah, it's true. And it would just add another dimension other than, okay, here's a concept art image, which may or may not be new, and here's another screenshot you haven't seen yet.
Yeah, we haven't really mentioned the concept arts. Do you guys have the same kind of feeling about those? Like you're just seeing stuff you've already seen, or would you like more variety?
Personally, art doesn't really affect me that much because whether it turns into from art to in-game I'm more for the in-game stuff than the art, personally. I like lore and I like all that stuff, but not really art, per se. So I'm kind of in the middle about the art, what they've been released so far.
I agree. The only piece of concept art that I saw that really caught my attention was the Tristram Cathedral, and that was because of its place in the game and its importance in the series, not because of it being like a cool picture or whatever like that. It's all about the game.
And that one was almost like a movie screen. That was full color and it looked like a shot from the cinematic.
It wasn't
awesome. Really. I think of concept art as like we got just this week with those sketches of like the guards in Chaldeum.
Oh yeah. That's a good point.
Which is kind of, I kind of enjoy those just because I do like the art. I enjoy looking at the stuff the Blizzard guys come up with. And I think it's cool to see, what the pencil sketches looked like, and then you can compare that to the final game imagery. It's fun to see how things evolve or how much they take their style from it. But I think from what you guys are saying that probably most fans agree with you that they just want, you want screenshots, you want information more than you want just pretty visuals. And the other, sort of the bigger issue that we often get into, and I don't want to sound like we're all, whining Diablo community members who just want more. But, we look at Bashiak is like the only person who appears to be doing anything on Diablo 3 public relations. And he is just their part-time community manager. He still does a lot of stuff for StarCraft and World of Warcraft as well. And he has a lot of duties that are behind the scenes where, I talked to him some months ago and he mentioned that he was flying off to Texas someplace, I think to Austin, to run like a whole seminar for all of the company salespeople from GameStop. So they sent 100 employees or something, and he basically does a presentation of Diablo 3, and they all get to play one of the BlizzCon demos for a while, and he answers their questions about it, just to kind of educate the retailers. Which I guess is an important thing. Obviously, it's not something we hear about publicly. Well, I guess you just did, but But, there's just a lot of, that's just for an instance, there's a lot of stuff that he has to do behind the scenes that has nothing to do with his Twitter or his account, his Facebooking or anything else that we see as fans. And it seems like, given that, Blizzard makes $40 kajillion a second off of World of Warcraft or whatever the figure actually is, and Diablo 3 is coming pretty soon, would it kill them to have one of their web people working, at least part-time on D3 and us getting a little more cool content in advance?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think once the beta gets announced that they'll probably up the number. If they don't, I think it's pretty stupid on their part. Just because of, it's being announced. And many fans are going to want to, know about it, and just more people in general require more supervisors and stuff like that.
But with the beta, in theory, fans will be in the beta. I mean, that's kind of the point of it, right? It's our hope anyway.
Yes.
And they haven't had an NDA on their last few betas, and they've said they're probably not going to have one on Diablo 3. So, I mean, they'll need more community managers just because there'll be more people involved, but they don't, at that point, there's going to be tons and tons of info coming out and screenshots and new features and everything else. Well, I mean, we'll actually have, builds and strategies to discuss at that point.
Yeah, that was what I'm thinking is once beta comes out and once people start going in and taking their own screenshots and their own videos, really at that point having someone at Blizzard posting content on the website is not really that important from my point of view.
They could, in theory, surprise us with some stuff. I mean, if we only have the lowest levels of skills and we only have, most of Act 1, then obviously if they showed something cool from Act 2 or Act 3, that would be news, because we would have seen 5,000 screenshots of everything in Act 1 by that point.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. They could be showing us other stuff as well. I just don't see how necessary it is, or it would be.
So I guess we agree then that if they were going to be doing more stuff on the PR and more stuff on the community relations, they should have been doing it for the last, 6 months and last year.
Yeah, assuming beta's coming up very soon, which we're all hoping.
Yeah, like you point out, that once the beta's going, then we don't really need them to be doing what we wish they'd been doing all along.
That's true. Yeah, I agree. And
they've really kept the plot not on the table at all. I mean, they've had very little in the demos, and they've told us almost nothing about it beyond the main framework of, it's 20 years later, the meteor strikes, etc. Are you guys happy that we've had so little story? And are you hoping that we'll keep the story almost entirely for the final game?
Yeah, I'll say that. Yeah, I'm glad.
Yeah, I agree. For me, Diablo isn't really about story. It's about killing things and getting powerful. But,
click.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, I at the same time, I wouldn't want to know exactly what's going to happen before I play it either.
Something we didn't really get into earlier that is, kind of the common thread that's always comes up is that Blizzard is making all of these outreaches to get casual fans. And obviously we three are pretty hardcore fans and we want more. But the point of their Facebook stuff isn't really to, appease us or to feed us more info. It's to keep fairly frequent updates going on Facebook so their million likes can be marched towards and they can get more casual fans to see it and view it.
That's true.
And the casual fans don't really know or care if the screenshot's the same thing we've been seeing for the last 8 months.
Yeah, as long as it's flashy enough to catch their eye, I guess.
The main rumors about Titan, their upcoming MMO, is that it's going to be it's going to be like half social game, half real game. And it's going to have all sorts of, I mean, obviously these are just rumors and no one knows if it's true, but from what Blizzard's talked about how much they're trying to expand into social media, it seems like it's going to be like half Farmville or something, or it'll be somehow connected to your Facebooking and Twittering and you can do all that stuff through it or with it.
Yeah, or you can, I mean, at least have updates to the game through your Facebook somehow.
I won't be surprised if they have that with Diablo 3. I mean, they have like the WoW Armory and stuff you can access via your browser, and you can run apparently WoW trading stuff through like an iPhone now.
Huh.
And I think that we'll be seeing the same sort of thing in Diablo 3.
Yeah, that would
like it or not.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of people who have different needs and different amount of integration into Facebook. And from what Bashiak has said about it, it seems like everybody at Blizzard is really on Facebook all the time, and they have all their friends on Facebook, and they do all their gaming stuff through Facebook. Like, if you recall the Real ID thing in the forums last year, where they were trying to make it a mandatory thing, you had to post in your real name.
Oh yeah, that was a nightmare.
Yeah, and that was like the worst thing they've ever done in terms of most fan opinions, and they had to back down from it. But it seemed like, I mean, maybe just all the PR guys, maybe all the community managers were just doing what they've been told to do and saying it was a great thing, and they didn't see any problem with it. Because I mean, that's their job, right? But,
yeah, that's.
But they sounded fairly, legitimate, fairly honest. That they were like, "Why is this a big deal? All our friends know we play games. All our friends know we like Diablo. We have our real names on our Facebook pages. So what's the point? Who would care?"
Well, it's because, I mean, for me personally, I have no problem telling all my friends and family what I do on my free time. But if I'm interviewing for a job where the person who's giving the interview thinks that, anyone who plays video games is a loser, and then Googles my name and sees like a bunch of posts on a World of Warcraft forum, that I could see that being detrimental.
My thought on that was that if you work at Blizzard, you're working on video games. I mean, that's your career.
Yeah.
So obviously it's a little different than if you're trying, for those of us out in the real world. Okay, as far as I'm not exactly in the real world, but people who have, if you're an accountant or something, or you work in, whatever. I mean, you work in a hospital. Maybe you don't want all your friends to see, or your bosses or your coworkers to see that you're playing, a level 85 Blood Elf 16 hours a week.
Right.
Whereas if you're at Blizzard, of course you are. That you're supposed to do that. So my impression was that they were a little bit divorced from the reality of most other people on that instance.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment, because when their livelihood is so revolved around games, there's very little of their life that's compartmentalized, where they're just like, okay, this part of my life goes here, this part goes there. I mean, they go home and play their games, they go to work and develop the games. So they really don't have the same perspective from those of us who don't hang out with people or take jobs with people where the majority are not playing video games.
And they're all really tech savvy and, Facebook app ready, and, they'll probably all have smartphones and everything else. So, I mean, they work in a tech company. I would assume they're pretty tech involved. Okay, well, thanks for your time, guys.
All right, well, thanks for having me.
All right, from here on out, the podcast is all BlizzCon PVP demo stuff, and we're going to talk to 4 people who played it, including your humble host. And first up is Nineball. So you were watching the opening ceremonies, and you were like, "Hey, cool."
I guess my first reaction might not have been like, "Hey, cool," because it was kind of like, "Oh, nice, they're finally announcing how they're going to handle, PvP or duels in the game," and just then they go through and it's like, arenas. Oh, this is going to go over with the Diablo community so well, because, they all just love, the World of Warcraft so much that they're going to be so thrilled to hear that they're going to be copying the arena system from WoW. It's just amazing.
I didn't actually think that. I thought they were copying the arena system from Gladiator, but
Diablo 2, I don't think that I've really PvP'd ever, besides, just a smattering of a few times with just some friends and such. So it's not really an aspect of the game that I was, too terribly concerned with. But, just, being a fan of the series, when I was there, I actually did go through and, give the arena one or two shots.
Do you play PvP in World of Warcraft?
Occasionally, I go through and play PvP when my friends can go through and talk me into it. It's like when I do it, I do have a lots of fun. Going through and just killing other people. It's a whole different concept. It does, it's a different type of gameplay. And even though I can enjoy it, it's not something that I'm too terribly grossed into. I have done like the arenas and the battlegrounds and things like that, but I focus more primarily on the PvE, PVM, whatever your flavor is.
I had someone argue with me about the previous guest on the podcast is a WoW player, is an old friend of mine, Dana, and she goes, "Why do you keep calling it PVM? It's PVE." I'm like, "What are you fighting the sky? You're fighting monsters." And she's like, "Well, there's destructibles in Diablo 3. I'm like, "Well, the table's not attacking me. It's just sitting there." I mean, sure, I can't kill it, but I don't know. I mean,
it's obviously sitting there ominously is what it's doing. That table is asking for it. Yeah.
It's got that wood grain, the kind I don't like.
Yeah.
So you do play PvP a little bit in World of Warcraft, but you didn't play it in Diablo 2, so it's not really your flavor. Are you happier with the concept of arenas for Diablo 3 than you would have been with just the PK switch in D2?
I do like that handling of it a little bit more, just for the fact that it's there for the people that want to do it, and the people that don't want to do it don't have to experience it. Cause,
you mean the D3 version, right?
Yeah, the D3 version, yeah. It's because, like if you never wanted to PvP in Diablo 2 and you went into a public game and then suddenly, someone, goes through and goes hostile to you, pops out, and, just suddenly you get a PK, it leaves a very, negative taste in your mouth and, kind of turns you off to the entire concept, where when they're, separated and put into their own, like, little compartments, that person that, in that same scenario might kind of look at it and give it a shot, as opposed to it being inflicted upon them. The person can then go through and, experience it, on their own, at their own pace.
Yeah, I'm a proponent of that as well. I didn't really care for the non-consensual element of it in D2, especially because I mostly played hardcore. And it wasn't so much the risk of dying. I don't think I was ever actually PK'd in hardcore, except for dying in a duel a few times. But it was just that somebody in town would just to be a dick, basically, would click hostile to everybody in the game, and then half the people would either leave the game instantly or dive back to town through a town portal. Yeah. And it just totally disrupted the party play, and the game would be ruined just by one person clicking a button. Even if they were, they were level 9 in a hell game or something, but there was no possible threat. People were just so paranoid, or else they had like chicken hacks on their machines, so if someone went hostile, they would automatically exit the game, and it was like, yeah, that's just annoying.
Yeah, because it's like you just hear that sound effect go off, and you're just hurry up, cue that town portal, let me get out of here, before you actually attempt to open up the player screen and see who it is that's actually going through and doing it. Yeah, and of course, as there were glitches and cheats worked in, you couldn't look because people could kill you before you even knew they were coming sometimes, which really, they had some hacks for a while that essentially ended the prevalence of open games in hardcore. You just couldn't play a public game because anybody could just come in and kill you without any recourse on your part except to not play it, which isn't really very fun. You are definitely of the camp that will anticipate Arena being a separate type of game mode and playable as its own thing. Yeah, and I mean, they haven't really talked so much about the actual mechanics of the Arena, because the one thing that I would like them to see, that they implemented in World of Warcraft, and I actually, took advantage of that at one point just to try it out, is like in World of Warcraft now, you can actually level up completely through PvP once you get to like level 10 and can actually engage in like the battlegrounds. You don't ever actually have to ever run a dungeon or kill a single mob that, that's not another person, because you can fully gear yourself out using the honor points, the currency system for PvPing, as well as gain experience and level all the way from 10 to 85 just in the PvP game. But I would really like to see them actually implement that for the Arena in Diablo. Maybe it probably would be harder for them to do something as far as currency and actually getting gear, because, that's part of the Diablo gameplay, is killing the monsters for gear. It doesn't particularly work too well if you could just, PvP all the time for gear. But, being able to gain some sort of experience or some benefit or reward or perk besides just a title or standing from doing the arenas would be a nice thing for them to add. I think you're going to be out of luck from what they haven't said much about it, but they have mentioned that, comments to the effect of D3 is about the PVM. It's about killing monsters in dungeons. Mm-hmm. And we don't want to give people too many rewards from PvP, except for like achievements and stuff. Yeah. But that's obviously subject to change. They haven't really discussed it at all, as you say. So, do you have any specific memories of you said you only played it once or twice, but do you recall who you played and how the battle went, and was it just like crazy adrenaline rush? And, how did it differ in your experience from the PVM that you played more of? I played the Witch Doctor, the 2 times I played the Arena, and it just felt like I got my ass kicked both times. I was probably just going up against some people because I didn't actually play it until the second day. And one of my other friends had played the Arena a couple of times the day before, and he said it's like the first couple of times that you play it, you don't really have a feeling for what it is that you're doing, because you have to be a lot more strategic than what you are in just the PVM game, and going through and just blindly clicking on all the mobs and things. You have to be a lot more aware of the abilities that the other side is using, where those flaming skulls are being targeted at. The wizard is, throwing their disintegrate off, when you have three mongrels start running up to you from the other side's witch doctor, that you better book it because they're about to explode. Things like that.
And people are a little bit smarter than monsters too. So
yeah, exactly. But it's just not being on the receiving end of a lot of those abilities. You don't quite understand how they fully function and things like that. And by the end of the first couple of matches that we played, the first time that I went and played through it, I have a little bit better understanding of what it is I need to do. Using the spirit walk on one side of the map to get behind some of the other guys to then spawn the mongrels on them and explode them in a like a quick kill scenario like that.
And even dying, I didn't really mind so much because the rounds were so short. Even if you screwed up and hit the wrong hotkey and teleported into a meteor or something, it's like, oh well, I'm playing again in 20 seconds. It's like everyone else just hurry up and die so we can start up again. Yeah, one of the fun things at the BlizzCon demo was that the characters were for all the characters, but especially for the PvP, were pre-made characters. They were level 30 or so, and they had all these skill points, and they had equipment, and they had skill runes. And you couldn't change any of that stuff around, but I thought it made it like an arcade fighter in some ways, where you were just sort of picking your character and then you battle. And obviously people are looking forward to playing PvP in D3 and using their own characters. But I do think there could be a use for, if not an esport use, at least sort of a way of leveling the playing field of having pre-made characters that everyone in a game would have to pick, and then you'd be skill instead of, some other guys played 18 hours a day since the launch and has every possible great item. You're not going to have much luck against him in PvP, even if you're a better player, in theory.
Yeah, and that's a very important aspect of it. It's like fully expect them to go through and try and leverage the Diablo 3 as arena as some form of esport, and doing some small little tournaments, trying to get it into the MLG or something along those lines. And in that respect, you'll probably have something akin to how they do it in World of Warcraft, where you're given set amounts of gear that you can pick from. They'll pull a whole bunch of high-end items, high-end runes, high-end gems, high-end enchants, what have you, and everybody picks from the same pool of gear. So that way everyone can have an idea. Well, if he's playing a barbarian, it will, set down to where you've seen all of what the melee gear looks like. So you can have an idea, well, he's using 2 swords, let me remember, everything that he has here. And just once it actually gets cohesion, a metagame will form. And, you'll be able to go through and see, well, that barbarian is using a 2-handed sword. Well, obviously he's going to be doing this, and this as people perfect, what the cookie cutter, PvP builds are. Although they'll probably be a lot harder in Diablo 3, just given how many different possibilities there are with your skills and then runes on top of that.
My feeling is that I'm probably not going to play so much PvM in terms of optimizing a PvP character. So I would do some and have some twinks and such, but there's going to be numerous items that are really only of use in PvP, or you'd want to build your character entirely to some. Obviously, we don't know anything what the builds will be like yet, but you'd use all your charms, all your equipment, all your skills, all your runes, everything purely for the PvP angle, and then no regular PvE character could compete with them head to head, or even in a 3v3 probably, just because they'd have 50% more damage or whatever than you would. Whereas I see the potential of having pre-made characters being much more of a skill-based, and they'd probably still kick your ass if they played 18 hours a day, but at least then you could say, well, I lost because he's better. It's not I lost because he spent 600 hours running, Mephisto or whatever.
Yeah, and that's one of those other things that I always thought was, kind of a crutch in my opinion with my experience in the World of Warcraft arena. It's like, yes, they do have better gear, but I think that gets used as an excuse, far too often. People don't, naturally tend to want to associate blame with themselves. And so if there's any aspect that they can then, rest the blame on the other party, they're a lot more likely to do that. He dropped me to 0 in 3 seconds and I got him to 95% health. It's that one piece of gear that made the difference. Once you really start getting into the higher end aspects of the gameplay, which I guess in the WoW equivalency is, once you get above like the 2200 rating, there might be some, varying levels in the gear between the players, but they're all highly skilled, and it's the skill that comes down to it.
Yeah, that's actually a different reason to be for the esport kind of pre-made characters. That way you could say, if you were like the best player on the realm and people were like, oh, you're just winning because you have the gear, then you could say, oh, well, let's step to the pre-made characters and I'll still kick your ass. If Diablo 3 were released tomorrow, when would you first play PvP?
For PvP, it would probably, after I have beaten Hell. I would be playing it first and foremost, just one to get the character at max level or what have you, but also just so I can, go through, see the story and get the full experience of it, because as any true Diablo fan would tell you, the game begins once you get to Hell mode. After I experience everything that the game has to offer for me on the PvE aspect, would be the first time that I really feel of my own volition of going through and testing out the PvP.
And any idea what character you'll go with it for that, or is it just going to be what seems the strongest once you're playing?
I've never gone for flavor of the month in PvP, for, whichever character happens to be the most powerful, at the time. It's like, there's just the character that I like, that I play, and, that's what I'm gonna go over and use in the PvP aspect of it.
Okay, well, Nineball, we will see you in the arena.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yes, of course.
You will see my blood smears on the ground. That is what you will see.
This is Flux and Exile speaking again. We're talking about the arena demo. And how did the PvP feel when you started? I mean, you're in this tiny little arena, and you get that cool practice round at the start where you just go out and beat the sauce out of each other in God mode.
Yeah, it definitely, your nerves kind of get on end. That's really what I love about player versus player, is that it's the unpredictability of it. So the first round through, it was not pretty for my team, that's for sure. But, your hands are shaking, you're trying to focus, you're trying to figure out what the hell you're doing, for one. And
it's very fast, very frantic at the start.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If anyone out there has played PvP Arena for Warcraft, like I have, I really feel like they really gutted the mechanics of all of that and then created this arena. So there's really no healing. There's a center. There's obviously a whole lot of tactics after we discussed that first round, after getting our butts kicked pretty thoroughly. I think it was a 13-4, and we rolled all wizards versus 2 wizards and a witch doctor. So it definitely felt, it was fast. Yeah, you're right. It was frantic. It was very quick. And so in like the 15 minutes, you could have about 17. I saw some pretty bad stalemates of like maybe 10 round games, but then I saw just crazy cleanups of like 25 round games.
Yeah, I saw a few where it would be like the last two, one witch doctor on each team, and they were just sort of hiding behind posts, throwing, explosives at each other. And everyone else who was dead was just like, I don't care who dies, just somebody die, I want to play another round.
Yeah,
You're annoyed when you're dead and just waiting. You're a ghost when you die, and you can run around and watch the action. But, you want to get back in there and start playing again. You don't want to wait. You don't really care who wins that much even. At least I didn't.
I mean, maybe if Blizzard did some sort of spiky walls that start closing in until one person finally wins. But yeah, you would have things like that where, well, my whole team got wiped out and it's all up to me. But really what that spelled out at that point was just a matter of time before if the 3 of you killed one, but then 2 of your guys are dead, it's just a matter of time before the 2 actually get you and kill you. So if I knew I was screwed, I usually just put myself out in the open as just a common courtesy.
Plus, you're on the timer and you had to wait in line. I think if it was actually on BNet and you were really worried about your team's rankings, it would be, much more tooth and nail to the final drop of blood kind of struggle.
Rarely did we actually come back from losing someone first off. We had lost Animus because he liked to roll the barbarian, and he would just kind of put himself out in the open, and so he would kind of get sniped to death. And so it was the 2 of us, Bailcloth and myself, we'd have to really work together. Usually that meant that the match was over, but very rarely we were able to come back from a deficit of missing a guy, and then beat all three of them.
Were you much of a Diablo 2 PvP player?
Not really, especially when things like Sigma came out and having Necros and Paladins and everyone teleporting around you. I was like, well, this is getting pretty ridiculous. There was some sort of PvP mechanic in Diablo 2, but I didn't really feel like it had its own designated place. It was almost like it was an afterthought, and seeing them announce the arena was just exciting because you could tell that the team was like, all right, guys, we have this great thing that people love to do, but how do we give them a place to do it really well?
Your first game was on the second day of BlizzCon, like in the morning?
Yeah, we played enough player versus monster, and we noticed that the line for PvP was really small, so we figured we could get our Diablo fix quicker.
You think the guys you played in your first game, I mean, they knew what they were doing at least. Do you know if they were all together to begin with as a team, or were they just people who've been playing PvP for a day already?
I know two of the guys were together. The Witch Doctor and one of the wizards were working in tandem, and then one was kind of off doing his own thing. They clearly had experience over us for that first round.
But then you guys went and got back in line more or less right away, and you said, let's do more PvP. The lines are shorter, and we can work on ours. So in line, you were like plotting strategies?
Yeah, that immediately happened. We got out of that, and we're like, oh, that was fun. And then we were reminded that we got beat pretty bad, and so immediately we started talking about what happened, what worked, what didn't work. And in that round, we came to the conclusion that running 3 wizards probably wasn't the best strategy, at least for us, and that we needed to kind of create a little variety. And then also noticing having a witch doctor attack me in that first round, he would shut me down so much. He would wait for me to teleport, and then he would cast this ground snare essentially, and then pretty much just eliminate me. So having experienced that, I was determined to master the Witch Doctor for the rest of the time,
So how many more times did you play the arena with your friends?
Oh, geez. I think we probably gave it at least maybe 7 or 8 more times.
So you guys obviously got, maybe not a finely tuned machine by the end, but you pretty much had a strategy and a system.
Yeah, we went from being 3 wizards to 2 wizards and a witch doctor, which still brought some wins, but the most effective one was Animus running barbarian purely for meat and distraction, Balecloth as the long distance gun on wizard, and then myself on the witch doctor to essentially just slow down and debilitate the team, the opponent, that is.
Mm-hmm. And you sent me a screenshot. We'll post that with this. We'll post an extra to that. Was that your last game?
That was one of the last games, and that was a really awkward match because, so essentially, we got our strategy down pretty well, and we went up against 3 barbarians, which, us losing as the 3 wizards, and then, I feel bad because I had to sit next to the 3 of them, while Animus he's really a trash talker, so I felt like I apologized a couple times, and I got pissed at Animus. I'm like, dude, you can't just start talking like that. They're sitting right next to me, and they were getting pretty upset because long story short, we beat them 23-0, to the point where the moderators came over and were kind of like, oh man, check this out. And so the 3 guys got pretty embarrassed, and then one actually got up and left. So I felt terrible, but obviously Animus didn't. Balecloth thought it was hilarious, but
ruined their BlizzCon.
Yeah, I feel really, really bad about that, but hey, I really believe that having variety in your arena team is crucial. They could change it. They could have a flavor of the month, running 3 demon hunters will just destroy everyone. Like that may end up, how it goes, but in that build, having one person to distract them, one person to do damage, and then one person to slow them, I felt was the best strategy. And then also, more importantly, find the center, cast your hydras, and basically set up camp in the center where the health globes were. And then pretty much they have to kind of dance around you and try and force you out of that spot.
I hadn't really considered the concept of pre-made characters, but having played them, it seemed like it was really a cool idea. It was like, it was like playing Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter or something kind of, where you were sort of on even footing with people. And do you think that having that sort of option in the final game where everybody would have to choose a pre-made character instead of just playing their own every time would be an interesting feature?
I think it's, Guild Wars actually has something like that, and it was kind of fun. Using that as an example in Guild Wars, I had done that initially just to kind of see what the player versus player was like, but then I had kind of a longing for a character that was uniquely mine, and I feel like that if they put in sort of like an esport where everyone is equal, I think that would be a great thing for people to try out and see if they like it, and especially for people who don't really want to level up. Even though everything is a level nowadays in video games, I do know people who, the moment you tell them that there's a leveling up mechanic, they're immediately turned off. So, that could be a way to capture that market. But having a character that's uniquely mine and tailored, and then succeeding in player versus player is, to me, a great idea. And then if I fail in PvP, well then it's up to me to figure out how to solve this problem. So it's really kind of a mini game inside of itself.
Or do you think that people will just so much want to play their own character that will never really take off?
That's a really good question. From my experiences in World of Warcraft Arena, there was nothing worse than coming across an opponent who clearly had all of the battle gear from day one. You go into the new area, and then next thing you know, you're getting steamrolled by this team who not only figured out an insanely cheap mechanic, but then also have all the gear. But then when you're on the receiving end of that, it's never fun. But when you're dishing it out, it's a hilariously good time. So I don't really know what to think about that. I feel like I think everyone will. I think the esport will have its place. I think everyone will want to try out, at least if you want to settle the dispute of who is better. If you're trying to figure that out between two people, then you can definitely go to the esport and settle it over skill. And that's really the thing: items versus and stats versus true skill. I personally am a fan of blending that all together, where I want to believe that someone who has weaker items can still prevail through good skill choices. But I'm thinking, I'm just predicting now that the esport pre-mades will not be as popular as having your own individual character. But I also am predicting that it's going to get to a point where some characters are going to get pretty out of hand, if not through their choice of stat allocation, then through having just insane armor that just makes them unkillable.
They've talked a lot about the 3v3 matches because they don't think it'll be possible to balance it. Just so much variety in the game. You can't really balance it for 1 versus 1.
Yeah.
But when you have 3 people on a team, like you saw at BlizzCon, you can kind of, you can find tactics that work together and you can supplement each other. And in theory, teamwork could triumph over brute force and killing power, etc.
Yeah.
Or a bad build. And the other thing that seems to be their plan is that we're going to have matchmaking and sort of a, kind of a hidden player score number. And they'll align you with people who are roughly at your level. And then that would obviously incorporate your skill and your character's equipment, etc. So you could have someone who really sucked and had great equipment that might not be as good as someone who had, less equipment and more skill. Then you'd still be looking at some guy who had both and was just unbeatable. I don't know how the matchmaking, would they put him on a team with 2 people that weren't very good? I mean, it's curious to consider how they're going to work with the matchmaking.
But on your comment for 3v3, I mean, it makes sense, and it's very it keeps the fight very central. Personally, for me, I'd love to see 5v5, 8v8, 12v12. I mean, that's probably not ever going to happen, but I would love to just see this giant bloody mess just going on in front of my screen with just everyone just ripping each other apart. I mean, 1v1 would be kind of lackluster because there's a very rock, paper, scissor feel to the mechanics where my witch doctor really couldn't do much against a wizard I could really shut down, but then my Witch Doctor could really shut down a Barbarian, but then the Barbarian could really rip apart a Wizard. That's how it felt for me personally. Yeah, I would love if anyone at Blizzard is listening and they want to make me very happy, they could go ahead and add as many people to an arena without breaking their server.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
even in the size of arena we saw at BlizzCon, would you want bigger arenas for that?
Sure. Whatever makes it crazier, I guess, it would be my goal. I mean, I know that at Blizzard they have their methods, and they probably have tested that out already, and it might be a disaster. I mean, 3v3 works great, and I had a ball. I would just, there's just so many great area of effect spells that could be, instead of hitting like one or two people, you just like blast 4 or 5 at a time.
Yeah, and there's all these cool skills that of course weren't even available, stuff that chains and multi-target hits and all those other wild things. So having played at some at BlizzCon, you can kind of foresee what it'll be like in the final game. Obviously that wasn't the full feature set available. There'll be more maps and there might be more gameplay styles. Can you envision like King of the Hill kind of things or free-for-all matches or
Oh yeah.
what would you like to see that would be different?
I would like to see a feature where you can kind of sign up for a game and you don't know what map and you don't know what play style. And I really like King of the Hill would be awesome. Capture the Flag would be awesome. Even like from the old Team Fortress days, they had escort missions where one person is, the president, so to speak, and you have to escort them to this final spot, and then the other side is trying to thwart them. That would be fun. I mean, there's so many different places I feel like that they could go with this that I would love to see.
And different maps, different size maps. I thought I liked the size because it seemed like it really focused and centralized the action.
For 3 people, that map felt great. It wasn't too big, but it really wasn't too small. You could just hide forever if you were in trouble, and it would take a while for people to get a hold of you.
Yeah, and obviously you're a fan of the arena. You think that will make you much more of a Diablo 3 PvP player than you would have been if it was just the same system as Diablo 2?
Absolutely. I feel like one of the things that was lacking in Diablo 2 was some sort of true guild support in the sense that guilds could go head-to-head with each other. It's pretty much in the game now. You can do PvP, but there's really no true measurement, and there's no real true system to keep track. I like having a set of points at the end and being like, well, I lost, or, I won. Like, I can find that out. Because doing PvP in Diablo 2, if you just go with a bunch of your buddies to the Bloodmoor area, eventually it just becomes like, oh, well, I won this match and he won 2 of those. And then, 10 matches in, you're just like, I have no idea. Like, you just sort of feel like, well, this person beat me a lot, or I beat them a lot, so I won or I lost.
So you think you'll be doing team PvP in D3? You'll be playing with friends?
Oh, absolutely.
Will you ever just do solo and just get thrown in a match with 5 other people? And if you're bored, I guess sometime by yourself online you would, but your goal is team stuff.
Yeah, and then I've already been talking with Bailcloth quite a bit about this. If one of us is not on, just kind of, continue the item hunt. That was always a great function of Diablo. And really the items that you find will make you better in PvP, and then once somebody logs on, team up and then go at it.
Any final thoughts on PvP or on what you played at BlizzCon? If you could go back and change something, or are you really just looking forward to it in the game? You're not really thinking about the demo anymore?
Actually, yeah, if I could change one thing that was really upsetting for me is that two things, and they both have to deal with the Barbarian, and it really upset me because I felt like he was a meat shield, and that was pretty much it. He had the ability to track you down and kill you, but when you give a Barbarian something like that Ancestral Spear, that can basically latch onto someone. It basically works like Scorpion's get over here move from Mortal Kombat. And that's so awesome, but it needs to track somebody because it's so easy to just step 1 pixel to the left and have it completely miss you and then go on, pummeling that poor Barbarian. And then the other thing that was really unfortunate for them is in that match where we fought those 3 Barbarians, all Bailcloth had to do was set up that time warp. Sorry, what is the official name of that guy?
Slow time.
Slow time, thank you. All he had to do was the slow time, and I'm actually shocked that this works, but if a barbarian leaps into your slow time, he is stuck in the air, and he has to cruise until he hits the ground. And pretty much what we would do is taunt them and try and get them to close the gap with that leap, throw up this, put the slow time down, and then we would just beat them to death. And
they're just a piñata at that point, yeah.
Yeah, you're a piñata with a whole lot of hit points, and I feel like that was a really cheap tactic. I didn't mind because we won, but I think overall that was disappointing because there was no way for them to get out of that. They made a grave error, and they just had to kind of deal with it.
Now they get to die.
Yeah.
They had a skill. They had a sprint or rush or something like that could make them immune to slow time. They could just run right through it. But people really had to know what they were doing and know what all the hotkeys were, which most people didn't in the demo.
Yeah, and if you did your sprint and then you followed into your slow time, well, you've got cooldowns now, so you have to be conscious about what you're doing and make sure you don't put yourself in a position where you're stuck like that.
Mm-hmm. But then the wizard has a slowdown on his slow time, so
yeah,
the barb could time it and just avoid it and then charge him, and then the wizard can teleport, but then he's got a cooldown on his teleport. And then the barb can just devour him if you know what you're doing and if you skill it out just right. But you guys obviously played together more than most people I think in the demo did. So you knew what you're doing and you had a system and you took advantage of it.
Yeah, we were a pre-made, so that's kind of cheap. So I feel bad about that.
But you are eager. Do you play any hardcore in D2? Or are you planning on hardcore in D3?
Man, it's a rush to play hardcore, but I say no now, but I know I will. And I will feel devastated when my character dies because we all know our characters will die. I mean, and that's really the point of it. But yeah, I will give it a try.
And so can you imagine doing hardcore arena?
I would probably not do that. That would be the ultimate. What would be great is if they had online web events, where two teams go into the arena and one team comes out, kind of like ultimate cage match, but for Diablo PvP.
Yeah, that's been one of the biggest points of debate that I've been advocating along with other people for some kind of a practice mode for hardcore arena, just because otherwise you get to play once for 30 seconds and you're done. Even if you win, you might play 4 or 5 times, but it just seems like the arena, as we've been talking about, is just really, really fun. It's something you really want to do a lot.
Yeah.
And it just would not be any fun to do it once and then your character, then you can't do it again for 2 weeks until you make a new character.
Yeah, it would only really be fun for the guy who won, but the way their system is set up is that you will eventually get killed.
Yeah.
So sooner or later, someone's going to come along and kill you, and then someone's going to come along and kill him. It's really kind of, if that's fun for people, I guess they can put that in if there's a need for it, but that doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun for me because suddenly, 2 weeks of effort or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, however long it takes, suddenly goes down the drain.
Yeah, I think they need the option to have death duels, permanent death duels, but it's just the arena's a really fun feature, and I don't want to have to make softcore characters just to be able to play the arena as often as I want to.
Yeah.
But then people on the other side say, yeah, but like you were saying, it'd be so cool to watch people battle when it really matters.
Yeah. If they
The other question is about teams. Obviously, a team's not going to last long in hardcore. If you die, you die.
Yeah.
If they made something where the entire team lived, if whichever team wins, everybody on that team comes back to life, then it seems like you'd have some really cool team battles because that would actually give you a chance to root for something.
That would be insane. I could honestly, Julian Love and all them, they said explicitly well, Diablo 3 PvP will not be an esport, but if they had a panel, like they do at BlizzCon, where they have 2 teams come in and it's a hardcore deathmatch at level 60 characters, and one side will be dead forever. I would go see that. That would be crazy.
You could sell tickets to that.
Yeah, no kidding. I would be very interested in seeing how that played out. And, one side would obviously be very happy and the other side would be just completely devastated.
Yeah, I think they've got to have the team thing because otherwise you would never have any team play. Like you were playing with your friend who was a barbarian
Yeah.
And he usually died first, but he would die in the support of the team. He would tank and he would give you openings and he would probably deal more damage than he absorbed.
Yeah, he would pretty much go, it was his job to flush them out and essentially martyr himself so that we could get a shot at, killing their support.
Yeah, and if he stayed dead forever when he died once, obviously he would never do that, and it would destroy you would never have a team. You just have a bunch of, I think, ranged characters sniping from behind posts, it seems like.
Yeah, it would be we would schedule to do this once every 2 weeks and then maybe take turns helping him level up his barbarian.
Yeah, and that just wouldn't be much. Yeah, would you just play softcore when you could play it all day?
Exactly.
Well, okay, so we've worked in my advocacy for the hardcore practice mode, something like that.
Yeah.
Who knows what they'll do? But it seems to me just the reality of it that there just won't be. I mean, there's not a lot of PvP in hardcore in D2 because people just don't want to risk their characters forever.
Yeah.
There's some low level stuff, but it just seems like if they want to have this really cool arena feature, it would be nice if everybody could use it all the time.
Yeah.
This is Flux talking to Dana again about her experiences at BlizzCon 09 and 2010 on the demos. You mentioned the arena demo briefly when we were speaking about the PvE earlier. And you were not as far as I know, you were not much of a fan of PvP in Diablo 2 at least.
I played a little. I was more of a PvE player back in the day. Unlike some other people, I wasn't collecting as many ears as I could. And certainly with World of Warcraft, that helped stoke my interest in PvP a bit more. So I think I came into Diablo 3 with a different sort of appreciation for PvP than I might have had 10 years ago.
Do you do much of the Battlegrounds or the other PvP in World of Warcraft?
I'm a huge fan of Battlegrounds in World of Warcraft, and have also spent a little bit of time doing some arena play.
So you were at BlizzCon 2010, and you saw them announcing Arena, and were you just like, want?
I wanted that and was very excited to know that once we got into the gameplay arena that we would have a chance to PvP with other people. So I was very much look forward to that and tried to get in as often as I could to do some PvPing in D3.
How many rounds did you play? Do you recall?
I believe I played 3 rounds.
And did you try all the characters, or did you specialize in one in particular?
I actually tried Demon Hunter once and Barbarian twice.
There was no Demon Hunter in PvP.
You are correct. I played then I played Barbarian all 3 times.
But did you play the Barbarian some in PvP? I mean in PvE?
I did not. I played Demon Hunter in PvE and Barbarian in PvP.
It's a very different playstyle. You just wanted to get in there and smash when you got to the arena?
I enjoyed Barbarian a great deal in my D2 days, so just wanted to get in there and try some of the leap effects as well as some of the whirlwind.
And did you play by yourself on random teams, or did you go with a team of friends and play together?
Well, once I went with my husband, once I played with you, Flux, and the third time was random.
So how was it on the whole? Just you played PvP, and how did the PvP experience when you finally played it? I mean, most people have seen it. It's very fast, very hard-hitting, very intense.
I think fast pace would sum it up. I think that the time for exploration, because you want to see what the environment looks like, you just don't have a lot of time to do that because 3 other people from the opposing team want to kill you. So if I had a tiny bit of regret, it's only that I didn't get a chance to see what the PvP arenas really look like since I was spending a lot of time trying to kill or, well, avoid being killed.
And you were a barbarian. They generally were the quickest to die in the PvP, in the arena games.
I beg to differ. I didn't always die first. Sometimes I died second or last. So barbarian can be played. I think that given enough time, the barbarian could be formidable in the PvP.
Did you ever PK in Diablo 2, or did you consensual PvP dueling, or a little of both?
Consensual PvP dueling. I was much more mannered in my younger days.
And there's not going to be any sort of in-game PvP or PK in Diablo 3. It's only in the arena. Will you miss the possibility of spontaneous attacks?
Well, in World of Warcraft, I play on a server that allows for that type of killing. So certainly I think I could miss that in Diablo, but since I probably will not be giving up World of Warcraft, I figure that if I want my ganking fix, I can just go back into Azeroth. And if I just want to play more kind of straight up PvE or PvP within the constrained arena environment, I'd be happy to go to Diablo 3.
And do you think that the arena is a good system? You think it'll encourage more total PvP and more organized and better style of PvP?
As opposed to what?
As opposed to the chaotic D2 version where you could just kind of try to find a dueling game or try to find someone to fight in your game, but there wasn't an actual game mode devoted to that.
I tend to lean slightly towards structure. I'd like to see how it's going to work out before I slam it completely. I think that for those of us who are kind of coming from the World of Warcraft structure where we do have arenas and we do have battlegrounds and we do have a structure which allows us to get into a PvP scenario rather quickly, it's something that might appeal to us. Other people might find it too constraining and just kind of want to wander around and hope for the best and kill a bunch of people. Again, for me, I like the structure.
Do you anticipate spending a lot of time PvPing in D3, and do you think you'll be spending your regular PvE time building up characters and finding cool items and getting ready for PvP?
Yes, I do. I very much would like to PvP in Diablo 3. The play session at BlizzCon 10 kind of convinced me that I have a better chance succeeding at PvP in Diablo 3 than I do in World of Warcraft. I think Diablo 3 is more suited, at this moment, as far as I can tell with the game build that they have now, Diablo 3 is more suited to my particular game style than World of Warcraft Arena is.
Did you enjoy the pre-made characters at BlizzCon where you could just jump in and have sort of an even footing, or do you really want your own character that you've built up and specialized?
For checking out the gameplay and for checking out what the characters can actually do, I think the pre-made is fine, but certainly the whole point of being in an immersive environment is to specialize as much as you can and to kind of make the character your own. So that I'm looking forward to making my own character in Diablo 3 and hope to have a lot of fun with it.
Do you worry that there'll be people who just spend all day item finding and specializing for PvP and that you won't be able to match up with them with a non-super optimized character?
Not particularly, if only because at this point in my gaming life, I'm accustomed to that in World of Warcraft. I know that there are going to be people who can spend more time than I can garnering the best items and the best equipment, etc., and really, I'm okay with that. I don't expect that I'm going to be on equal footing with someone who plays 40 hours a week when I can only devote 5 to 10 hours, for example.
On that front, do you think it would be fun to have the pre-made characters as an option in the final game, assuming everybody in the match had to pick a pre-made, sort of like you're playing a gauntlet or an arcade fighter, where that way it's about the player skill instead of them having every superb item you'll never have the time to find yourself?
I think that definitely has its benefits. I've heard other MMOs that will be coming out on the market have something similar to that, and I'm curious to see how the fan community reacts to those particular options. I am always looking for ways to gauge how much is a person's skill versus a person's item level, and I'm curious to see how that works out.
On the whole, how do you feel about the arena system? You seem pretty positive about it in Diablo 3.
I want to see where the arena system in Diablo 3 goes. I'd like to compare and contrast it to that of World of Warcraft. And again, I'll admit my bias. I think in the long run, I'll probably be a better Diablo player than I will be a World of Warcraft player. So I am predisposed to wanting to like that arena system better than the World of Warcraft system. But I think right now I'm interested and excited about where they're going with the game.
And do you think that different game types would work? King of the Hill or escort missions or capture the flag? Or do you just want, kind of the 3v3 or 2v2 and just kill?
I think for variety and flavor, I'd like to see something introduced in the PvP that was a little more goal oriented. My past experience with World of Warcraft has shown me that even when there are goals, there are going to be people that just want to kill other players, which can really hamper the game style. So the gameplay. So as long as there are options where it could be kill, 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 or you can get into a game where there is a predefined goal at the end of it, I think either one would be great.
And in your Diablo 3 arena play, do you anticipate being on part of a team, having a couple of friends that you're always playing with, or are you just going to go random matchups and see how the cards fall?
I'd like to do both. I'm a big believer in comparing and contrasting the experience. I think both types have their own particular benefits and challenges to them. I'd like to play on a team with my husband, for example, and since we know each other so well, see what we can do about getting some sort of rating in that particular arena system. On the other hand, sometimes playing with strangers makes it a little more exciting to see how quickly you can pick up on their strengths and their weaknesses and see how well you end up cohesing as a team in the end. So I'd be open to both types.
And do you have any final thoughts on the arena? Anything you didn't get to mention that you'd like to throw in?
Seeing the faces of people when they're beaten by a girl is kind of interesting.
But when you're playing D3 over Battle.net, you're not going to be in the same room with your opponents, generally speaking.
Yeah, you're right, and that has absolutely nothing to do at all with the arena system. It's just something fun to throw in there.
I talked to Exile earlier, and he played with two friends, lots, and got really good. And their last game in the arena, they won 23-0.
Nice.
Sitting right next to three guys, and one of them apparently got so pissed he quit in the middle and just walked away.
LOL!
So that's a little, as you mentioned, it can be interesting to see their faces.
It can be, and that's, I think that's a lot of appeal there for things like the LAN parties and the type or the big gaming parlors that they have all across Southeast Asia and other parts of the world where you can play in a room full of people while you're all staring at your computer because, again, it's that immersive environment. It's the fact that you're in a community that really values the same things you do, and watching the looks on their faces as they win or as they lose, there's a lot of amusement to be had there.